Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Strategies to Support Parenting Teens, Single Parents, and Pregnant Mothers. This is one of a 9-part series on the super strategy support documents that the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support has developed for the Illinois Community College Board, and then there is a separate set for the Illinois State Board of Education. So today we're going to talk about strategies to support parenting teens, single parents, and pregnant mothers. Just a little direction here as we get started. In your handout section, you should go down there and see that. We have a couple little things for you. One is the super strategy document that accompanies this particular webinar. And in addition to that, there is an ICSPS FY21 professional development flyer. So check those two items out. And all of you are currently in listen only mode. So if you have any questions, you have a couple ways in which you can engage with us. One is you can raise your hand and we will unmute you and allow you to speak and hang out and do all that great stuff. And then the other option you have is to just post something there in the question pane and we'll be addressing questions as we move forward. So with that, I'm going to hand the floor over to our speaker today, which is Brittany Boston. Brittany is the Associate Director for Equity and Outreach at the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. And she is also the author of these documents. So I'd like to welcome Brittany and hand the floor over.
Thank you, Amy, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. As Amy mentioned, these have been a series of webinars that we have been doing, and this is our second to last one, actually. So next week will be focusing on out of workforce individuals, but this week we are focusing on parenting teens, single parents, and pregnant mothers. So before we jump in, per usual, just in case there's anyone on the call who is unfamiliar with our center, I do want to give a little background information as to who and what ICSPS is. So we are housed at Illinois State University, and the center itself has been around since 1977. And our focus on our professional development, our resources, is all around transition, recruitment, retention, and completion as it pertains to career and technical education across Illinois, and especially for those special populations learners that that are discussed within Perkins V. And we do work with both the secondary and post-secondary systems. So you'll see that on today's webinar, a lot of the strategies are a combination. Some may pertain to you and some may not, depending on the system that you work with and the population that you're currently working with. So as Amy had mentioned, there are a few handouts that you can grab. The slides from today are down there to download because I do have a few links and some resources that I share, so I want to make sure you're able to utilize those. And then we also have our professional development flyer with some of the upcoming PD that we have, and that is also all linked, so you can click on those and get registered for any of the events that sound pertinent to your area of work and that might be informative for you. So a little bit about what this half hour is going to look like with me today. We'll get into sort of defining, because as you notice, the title here, I fit in quite a lot. I don't just say students with children. I specifically call out parenting teens, single parents, pregnant mothers. And there is some reasoning behind that. So we'll go into that. We'll discuss some potential barriers that these particular students may face because they, are parenting and having to, face some potential barriers both socially and academically. We'll talk about some ways that we can inform and recruit this particular population of students into career and technical education, and then jump into supports and additional services that these students may require. And then as always, for any of you who have participated in webinars with me, I like it to be a discussion. I want to hear from the programs. I want to hear strategies that you're implementing, questions that you have. And so we will open it up for that towards the end, and I will share out some additional resources as well that I feel and hope will be useful to you. All right, so let's get into the meat of it, the content of why you're here. So as you can see, I have out there parenting teens, single parents, and pregnant mothers. And so the reasoning that I was so specific in the language that was used is because we are combining secondary and post-secondary for this webinar. And so when you're talking about the secondary system, we're talking about junior high, high school, we're talking about teenagers. And so when we talk about teenagers, it can be pregnant teenagers or single parents that are teenagers, or even teenagers that are co-parenting together. We know that teenage pregnancy and teenage parenthood in and of itself um, can cause some barriers and maybe some difficulties that at that age certain individuals may not be equipped to deal with or to handle. And so I wanted to be very specific when we broke down who falls within this category. And then when we talk about the post-secondary system, you know, by age legally, we are talking about adults. And so that really is those unmarried or legally separated individuals who have minor children or a child. We're also talking about pregnant adults. So there's reasoning behind the language that is being used. And so hopefully I clarified that a little bit there. And so when we talk about potential barriers, again, depending on whether we're talking about teenage parents or individuals within the post-secondary system, some of these can vary. But one of those potential barriers is lack of affordable childcare or lack of childcare altogether. And especially right now, as we currently find ourselves still, unfortunately, in the middle of a pandemic, we're having to balance our social personal lives and our work and education lives in a way that many of us may have never had to balance before. As a working mother myself, I have two small children. I am currently working from home, and I have been very fortunate enough to be able to do so and to have a child care provider for my children. But there was moments and continue to be moments where I have to balance both. I have to have my kids home with me, but I still have, my responsibilities and duties when it comes to my job that need to be fulfilled. And so our students are experiencing this as well. And a lot of times that can be a barrier and a discourager in and of itself into enrolling in a program. A potential for dropping out of high school is not being able to afford childcare or have a supportive childcare system in place in order to, be involved in an academic setting. And then another barrier, again, that goes along the same lines as the lack of childcare is that disruption in school or coursework that results from pregnancy-related absences and maternity and paternity leave. We know that, well, we may not all know, but when you are pregnant, there are doctor's appointments, there are checkups, there are things that have to be scheduled and can take you away from your day to day and interrupt your day to day routines. And I wanted to be very clear to put maternity and paternity leave in there as well, because that is something that fathers have a right to also. But again, that is, we want to be supportive, we want to allow that bonding time for the student and their child, but also acknowledging that that is time that is taking them out of class, that's taking them away from their coursework. And how exactly do we plan for that? How do we respond to that when it comes to the student and being able to support them through this process? And lack of proper support services or systems, sorry, whether it's family support, social support, whether it is support within their academic institution, healthcare. I mean, this can be a multitude of things, making sure that they have the appropriate resources that they need in order to have a healthy pregnancy, a healthy delivery, parenting classes. There's so many, the saying always is it takes a village, right? And it's so true because there is so many different support systems that need to be in place and should be in place in order to assist not only these students, but anyone entering into parenthood, and having to juggle being a parent, going to school, working a job, right? It's a lot to have on a plate. And then difficulty obtaining or lack of accommodations related to pregnancy and parenting. So as I had mentioned, maybe lack of proper health care when it comes to appointments for pregnant women or newborn appointments, accommodations within the classroom, academically, just maybe students not being aware that they can ask for these accommodations, or potentially even some institutions not offering them or having them available to students. So how can we inform this particular special population about career and technical education? And I apologize, I will be sipping water every once in a while. I have a bit of some sinus issues happening, so bear with me here. But one way we can do this, and if you've been on any of the other webinars that I've done around special populations, this is always the first one that I put up here. And you're either going to be sick of it or hopefully it's sinking in. But when we're talking about career and technical education, exposure is key. You cannot go into a program, you cannot go into a career, you can't make a choice on something if you don't know that that option exists. So making sure that we are informing our students about the different career and technical education opportunities available to them. And that could even mean partnering with your local community college, doing, hands-on experiences and exploration days. And we're finding ourselves still in a virtual environment. So that could even be maybe having a Zoom tour of one of the facilities or programs at the community college, or an employer who can offer up, a Zoom or Facebook Live tour of what their what their experience would be like if they were to be an employee in that field or enter onto that career pathway. And again, making sure that we're informing our students about the different career options and how they can get started during high school. We have dual credit, we have all of these different options for individuals who are in high school to start and get a head start into their post-secondary education, and making sure that we're making that information known and readily available to them. And one of the great things about some career and technical education programs that can be a huge selling point to students who have children is that a lot of times as a student in a CTE program, you are able to work while simultaneously attending a program to obtain that certification or degree in whatever field of choice they so choose. And so that can be a big selling point because they have a family to provide for. They have mouths to feed and roofs to put over a head. And so being able to further their education, which allows them to then grow their career and obtain that life-sustaining wage and move up that ladder, but also being able to do that while supporting their family is a key selling point. And again, emphasizing potential earnings for certain careers within CTE and the timelines for completion for those students, and how really taking a deep dive with the students and mapping out that pathway and what, setting those goals and really giving maybe even a visual as to what those steps look like and how they can find that integration of that work-life balance. And then partnering with local agencies or programs who are already supporting single or teenage parents and partnering with them to help promote your CTE programs. And so this could be any of your local child care facilities in the area, reaching out to them and having just an open dialogue and conversation with them about the programs that you have within your school or your community college, the additional services that you can offer to help support students who have children but want to further their education, DHS programs, just any of the programs that you have that are continuing to work with and support this particular population of students, build that relationship, open that line of communication, share flyers, share brochures, maybe, politely invite yourself when we can all, every one of us be in person, politely invite yourself to come and do a small presentation about the programs that you have, the supports that you can provide, and just keep those programs and agencies in mind and keep those lines of communication and open, because the end goal for all of us is the same. We want these students to be successful. We want them to be able to provide for their families, and so we need to partner and work together in order to make that happen. Okay, so let's dive a little bit more into how we can support our students who are pregnant or have children, and maybe some additional services that we can potentially offer them. So when we're talking about pregnant and parenting students, we want to make sure that our staff and our students are very aware of the protections and the rights that they have as a pregnant or parenting student. And so you'll see there Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, that really goes into depth of the protections that are put in place for students who are pregnant and have children, and the rights that they have when it comes to their education. And so making that information available and providing training to staff and also your student population, making sure that they are aware of what their rights are. And then along the same lines, we want to review policies on the services for students with temporary medical conditions. So when we talk about pregnancy, when we talk about maternity leave, that can actually fall within the category of temporary medical conditions. And so we want to make sure that we review the school or college's policy regarding absenteeism, truancy, and making sure that the rights of pregnant and parenting students and teens are protected under that Title IX. I apologize there, I needed a water break. So again, when we're talking about childcare, counselors and advisors and education staff in general, as best as we can be, being aware of local childcare options, and then also financial supports that are available to parenting students. We know that there can be, depending on their income level, there can be some additional financial supports for childcare, and we want to make sure that we can provide that information to them and have the correct information and resources available to them pertaining to childcare. And in that same realm, keeping an up-to-date resource library of any of the local agencies that can be beneficial or maybe need to be put in place for referral for this particular special population. So again, as I mentioned, childcare, even mental health services, tutoring, supplemental nutrition programs, early childhood education programs. And this could be a physical handheld resource library. This could be something that is kept on your school website. And something that you continue to check back with, right? We want to keep it up to date. We want to make sure that these facilities and services are still available. If there's been any additions, any new programs or services that have been added, we want to make sure we keep that information in there and making it available to all of our students. Also allowing students, when possible, to have access to academic instruction during maternity and paternity leave. So one of the silver linings, if I can say that about the pandemic, is I think it allowed us and gave us the opportunity to rethink how we connect and communicate with our students. And some of us may have excelled at this virtual environment, some of us may have not, but I think that there are positive takeaways that we can continue to implement now, and even once we go back to a new normal, when we want to continue to engage our students as best as possible. And so that could be, if you have a student who's on maternity leave, or if you have a student who's on paternity leave, being able to maybe have a Zoom meeting with them once a week to check in, see how things are going, give them maybe an update on the work that they've missed or what's coming up, just to continue to keep that connection, to keep that relationship. Because again, as I've said multiple times in all of these webinars, relationships are key when it comes to keeping students engaged in the program and keeping students moving along that career pathway. They need to feel a connection. They need to feel as though they've built a meaningful relationship with someone in that program, right? And so, for example, if I left and had a baby, I want to know that I'm missed, for lack of a better term there. They want to know that they have a role, they are a key participant within that program. And then also, if you have students who are receiving services through an IEP or that individualized education program, you want to make sure that those continue, that they continue to receive those supports both during pregnancy and any parenting related absences from school. We know for those on the call who have children, you know that children get sick, children have doctor's appointments, dentist appointments, all of those wonderful things that come along with being a parent, and that they are not old enough or mature enough to take themselves to. And so that is also the role of a parent as well, and that requires potentially missing some school and some coursework in there to care for their child. And we want to make sure we're also providing reasonable accommodations for students both during and after pregnancy. And so these are a few examples that I listed, but this is not by any means an exhaustive list. If we have pregnant students, we want to make sure that they're comfortable in their classroom. And so if we have to accommodate by a larger desk or a different arrangement for them to sit and learn, we want to be aware of that. Elevator access, cell phone access for emergency calls. I know a lot of schools, teachers, instructors, they have a no cell phone policy, and for perfectly good reasons, absolutely. But again, I'll relate it back to myself as a working mother. My husband works in a facility where he, for safety purposes, cannot have his cell phone on him. So if there is any issue with childcare or with my children, I am who is contacted because I am the only one who can be contacted during working hours. And so if you see me in person, which hopefully someday soon we will, you will see that I either have my iPhone watch on or my iPhone with me, because if something happens, I need to be able to respond. And so having that conversation with students and maybe setting up a new plan in place for them if they need to have access to their cell phone, and set some expectations as to what that looks like. You know, we don't want it to just be, well, you can utilize your cell phone at any time for whatever reason. Setting those expectations and guidelines and really having that conversation, but at the same time, allowing the student to feel supported and as though they are reachable by their child or childcare provider if needed. Making adjustments to class schedules if needed. As I had mentioned, if you have a pregnant student, they may have doctor's appointments that need to be my apologies there. I'm talking too much, apparently, irritating my throat here. But pregnant students may have doctor's appointments that need to be attended to and may cause some missed class or coursework because a lot of times they are at the mercy of the doctor's schedules. Missing class for paternity or maternity leave, if they have a sick child or they need to take a child to the doctor, just making sure that we can be as flexible as possible when it comes to class and course schedules. Freezing grades, if at all possible, and an option within your institution while on maternity and paternity leave, I think can say to a student that they are being supportive and that we understand that the bonding that occurs and happens during maternity and paternity leave is important, but we also want to acknowledge that their academic path is important as well. And so maybe talking with your institutions and seeing if that is an option. And also once students come back and do have children, making sure that they have a private space if they are a nursing mother, a private space to either nurse or pump, and then an area where they can properly store milk until they are able to return home. Again, just making sure that we are being as accommodating as we can and expressing the importance of that connection and being a parent, but also allowing them to participate academically as much as they can as well.
Brittany, one of the things that just comes to mind as you're walking through these different supports is really the highlight that has been placed since the pandemic. One of the highlights of the pandemic was really that idea of accommodations and what are things that we can consider for our students that weren't something that were even on the table a year ago. So I do encourage us to think about those. And what are those accommodations? Can we have flexibility in class attendance? Can we have flexibility in assignments? Can they be able to get a recording of the class and watch it at a later time? I was on a call yesterday with a program that they are having an influx of individuals who are truck drivers. And they're joining the programs because the truck drivers are now able to watch the recording of the class and be engaged in the class, but it's more of an asynchronous way of doing things. So I really challenge us to think about that. How can we be accommodating, but at the same time still be rigorous and keep our high standards, but at the same time allow for these flexibilities in schedule with our students?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for pointing that out, Amy. I try very hard to look on the positive side of things and put a positive spin to things, especially now that I have children. You know, you never realize some of the things that come out of your mouth until it comes out of your child's mouth, and you're like, oh wow, that's what I sound like. But taking the pandemic and the fact that we have moved all virtual, there are benefits to that. There are certain aspects of that that we can continue to implement, and may even be of more benefit to our students when we do move back to an in-person, and maybe even making it a hybrid and using Zoom and all of the virtual platforms that we have discovered to connect and converse and engage with each other, and continue to utilize those to engage with our students. And the end one here, as I've been talking, I've been mentioning maternity and paternity leave, but making sure that we're providing appropriate supports and services and accommodations to parenting fathers as well. I think we tend to, those hidden bias or those gender roles, we tend to relate parenting and childhood to the mother. But we want to make sure that we are accommodating parenting fathers as well and supporting them to help them not only be a successful parent, but be a successful student and a successful employee as well. So when we're talking about supporting parenting students and pregnant students, one of the key things is really that, as I had mentioned earlier, that relationship building and that engagement. And so if possible, offering those counselor or academic advisor services several times throughout the semester, throughout the year, to track student progress, to have those conversations of what the plan is, and really setting out a plan and mapping out, here's our end goal. If you know what the career choice is, here's our end goal. And so how do we get there? What are the steps that we need to take to get there? And what does that look like? What's the time investment in order to get there? And providing opportunities for career assessments and career exploration. Again, as I had mentioned, exposure, hands-on experiences when it comes to CTE is key to really allow students the opportunities to learn about the different pathways that are within CTE. And as I had mentioned a little bit before, assistant goal planning and having that tailored academic plan. We all know, especially if you are a parent and have children, you know that you have to have a plan in place, and it may not always go as you hoped, but we want to make sure that we are working with our students to better their education, to get those certifications, those degrees, to enter into the workforce, to maintain that employment as well, and support their families along the way. And so looking at even those small goals, taking baby steps to get to that next larger goal, and really looking at those tailored academic plans. And then when and if needed, providing academic intervention. And if you have counselors and academic advisors who are meeting with students throughout the semester on a regular basis, it's easier to pinpoint when that academic intervention needs to happen, rather than if you just meet once a year to have a check-in, see how things are going. If you're having those regular meetings and have built that connection and relationship with the student, it allows for earlier academic intervention, which can help get the student back on track. And then again, when we're talking especially about the secondary system, school nurses can really be a key part here in pregnancy identification, referrals to quality prenatal care, because at times that can be a barrier or a concern, is that quality prenatal care, parenting education regarding prevention of any future pregnancies, referrals to clinical services and healthcare, early childhood education, really having that school nurse be, again, one of those individuals in that support system for the students. And then setting up student support groups for pregnant and parenting teens and students. Again, if we've listened to any of the other webinars, I'm a big advocate of mentorship, support groups, whatever terminology you want to put to it, because it builds that connection, it builds those relationships. It is an environment where a student can share similar experiences with former students or individuals in their career field of choice and really have deep conversations and have someone that they can see have walked in their footsteps in some way, and that they can connect with and relate with and understand some of the challenges or issues that they may be facing. And hey, if they could do it, I can do it. And so providing those opportunities for support groups and conversation. Okay, so if you haven't noticed by my multiple water breaks here, I've been talking far too much, and so I want to open it up to you guys for any questions that you have, or what are some things that either when you were in person or going back to in person, or even now as we're still all virtual, what are some supports that you've put in place to continue to engage students who either have children or are pregnant? How are you engaging them? How are you keeping them involved? How are you reaching out to them? I'd love to hear your thoughts, your comments, questions.
Give everybody a second to type, or if you would like to raise your hand and you're confident your microphone is working, we would love to hear from you.
Yeah, and while we give you guys a moment to type out any thoughts or comments, we are in the home stretch. Next week, 2 weeks from now, we have the last webinar within the Special Population series, and we will be focusing on out of workforce individuals. And this was an intentional move on my end to put this particular special population last because it is more relevant to the post-secondary system. So that will be March 10th at 2:30. So if you want to get registered for that, the slides are in the handout and you can click that registration link. Okay, so I did see one comment come through. We have a lactation room at our school. We're community college. However, we did discontinue our daycare. It was for the entire community, not just our students, as we were losing a lot of money because of it. Yes, there is quite a bit. I think, yay, bravo, round of applause for having a lactation room. I think a lot of times we assume that a restroom or a bathroom stall is adequate, but really making sure that we are providing an environment where a nursing mother can feel comfortable and supported. So that's fantastic. The idea of the daycare within the community college that's open to the community, I love that. So that really breaks my heart that you had to discontinue that. But yes, I know there is a lot of financing that goes into having a daycare because there's DCFS requirements and regulations that have to be followed. And so in a snow globe world, it would be perfect to have a daycare within the community college or within the school. But there's some expenditures that come with that.
And then Brittany, there is an additional comment saying that there's resources and referral agencies that can help with finding and paying for pregnant and parenting teens and working parents. So be sure you're using your partner network. Be sure you're talking to those cool cats over at Adult Education. Talk to your workforce friends. Look at ways in which you can braid funding to best serve and provide for your students.
Yes, absolutely. Partnership, partnership, partnership. Like I feel like we can't say that word enough. Um, I feel like sometimes I've heard the word competing sometimes in conversations, but I think that's really, we don't want to look at it that way, right? We, at the end of the day, everyone has the same goal in mind. We want our students, our learners to be successful. We want them to have the skills in place to enter in the workforce, not only when it comes to specific skills as they to their career, but also to continue along that career and keep their job and keep that life-sustaining wage. So we want to combine forces and really support our students as best as we can.
And again, there was a comment about connecting students with the WIOA and doors if they qualify, since their monies can be used for childcare there. Excellent. Great way to use that partnership. Great way to really braid funding. And again, providing our students those referrals so we're able to have true service integration.
Mm-hmm. And don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to reach out. If you stumble upon someone's email address or phone number, give them a call and introduce yourself and start that, open that line of communication. I mean, what's the worst they can say, right? And so really being able to communicate and introduce yourself and build those partnerships, absolutely.
Yeah, I think the analogy that I've heard lately is don't sit back and wait to be asked to dance, like take the initiative
Mm.
and
Hmm.
ask what your place is, because you have a lot to offer as well to these students. So be sure that we're showing that partnership. There's a lot of win-win for our students as we work through supporting special populations.
Yes, I agree. And so you'll see on your screen some additional resources on here. The first one is a link to the super strategies themselves. So we do have a group specifically for the secondary system and a group specifically for the post-secondary system. A lot of the strategies are similar and overlap, but since we are talking about minors versus adults, there are some differences there. So be sure to check those out. And you'll also find the recordings from the previous webinars within this series. And then we talked a lot about, engaging our students and recruitment, especially for that post-secondary system. And so that is a series that we did a few months ago about recruitment, engagement, and retention, and especially as it pertains to this virtual world and social media and how to utilize those platforms as well as your website to really get the word out about your program and the opportunities that it can provide to potential students. And then we also have a Universal Design for Learning series that we did, as well as that same link will take you to some other UDL webinars and resources that we have, really looking at the different learning styles that all students have and how to be accommodating to those different learning styles and really um, provide a curricula and classroom environment that is accommodating to all students and supportive of the different learning styles to allow them to absorb and learn information that works for them. So be sure to check out that series. And as always, just explore our website, on all that free time that you guys have. Explore our website because we do have a lot of resources on there. If you know, we've been doing a lot of webinars, and so check all of the resources out, some of the things that we have on equity, recruitment, civil rights. We've got a lot on there, so don't be afraid to just peruse. And here is my contact information. If you have any questions regarding the super strategies, special populations in general, as I said earlier, don't be afraid. I'm giving you my email right here, so don't be afraid to send me an email, ask me a question. I'll be more than happy to answer them. Yes, email Brittany with all kinds of questions.
Anything like when is it going to get warmer? What's the temperature going to be? No, just kidding.
I
So
mean,
I've thrown
we're
a
in
bunch of,
double digits, so we're
I
like,
know.
this is like a heat wave for Illinois
Oh,
right now.
my kids are in shorts right now. I have posted a bunch of stuff in the chat, just sharing some great resources. I love to highlight that it is CTE month and we have some student success stories. So if you haven't checked those out, click that link, check them out. The ICCB CTE team is doing a ton of hard work to really get those success stories out to everybody. And just a nice shout out to the Director for Career and Technical Education out of ICCB, Natasha Allen, has really put that as a priority for this month. So if you're not getting her emails, let us know and we'll put you in contact with her. Or if you are getting her emails and want to share those out, please do. But just a lot of great things going on in February. And it is a short month, but it is very important that we share out all the great work that's being done for career and tech ed across the state. But yes, email Brittany
Yes.
with questions as well. She enjoys answering any kind of question.
Yes, I do. And yes, I can't believe I forgot about the student success stories. So as of right now, we only have a few on the website, but we have more coming. And we also have a template that we have created with ICCB for programs to either utilize within their institution to promote their programs, or to complete and send back to us, because we are hopeful that this will be an ongoing resource, an ongoing source of recruitment and marketing materials that we can provide to the programs. So check that out. If you have students that you would love to share, what their experience has been with CTE, fill that out and send it our way, and we will continue to create those resources for you. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining me today. I haven't seen any more questions or comments coming through, so I will let you get back to your hopefully beautiful and sunny Wednesday wherever you are. And again, this is being recorded, so if you need to share it out or rewatch it for any reason, it will be posted on our website. And we will touch base with you again in a couple weeks to finish out this special populations series. So thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all so much.